Poker's legendary champions, next generation stars, and tireless ambassadors of the game, sharing their wisdom and guiding your journey to high achievement on the green felt. This is Tactical Tuesday on Chasing Poker Greatness with your hosts, Brad Wilson and Jon Chai.
Welcome, my friend, to another episode of the Chasing Poker Greatness podcast. As always, this is your host, the founder of ChasingPokerGreatness.com, Coach Brad Wilson. Today, I am joined by Jon Chai for Tactical Tuesday. Jon, how you doing, sir?
Doing good. Not in Korea anymore, on the East Coast. Not with you though, but in the same time zone now, at least.
Well, we got something going at least. Just traveling all around the world. Love to see the commitment for Tactical Tuesday. Whether you're in Korea or wherever you're at now or home, we still get Tactical Tuesday done.
Yeah. MTT players never miss a Sunday. We never miss a Tuesday.
Never miss a Tuesday. So do we have a theme though? How ambitious are we?
Oh, we have a theme. We zero slacking on Tactical Tuesday. The theme this week is going to be bluff catching without a pair.
Okay. Bluff catching without a pair. Well, without any further ado, let's just dive into the hand and I will break down the action. So you have King Jack off in the big blind. We have fold, fold, and button open to 25, and you call. So pretty standard stuff here. Button is most likely a reg, right?
Yep, button is definitely a reg.
Definitely a reg. Queen, queen, six flop. So you have King Jack off, queen, queen, six, rainbow. You check. Villain bets what looks to be a quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah, they bet a quarter. Can't fold to a quarter.
Yeah, not planning on folding to a quarter. I probably wasn't going to fold to a third. So yeah, definitely not folding to smaller than a third. We probably could even have a really short discussion on this. I could imagine, calling this c-bet with King Jack high looking a little bit strange to some people. I guess the short.
I mean,
yeah, sorry.
Anything besides folding is.
Yeah, but then I could just see someone. I think me way back in the day when we first started coaching probably would have folded King Jack facing a third, maybe not a quarter, but facing a third. I think I would have, I was over folding and maybe King Jack is just too good. But I could see people I could see some listeners having a little bit of confusion of are we just calling everything facing a quarter? If we're calling King Jack, or is it because we have overcard or three straight or?
Yeah, so we have good blocker properties to the queen, and we have decent backdoor properties, and we could just have the best hand. And if you look at the pot odds there on the flop, you can see them. You're getting 5.21 to 1. So you need to win 15% of the time in order to call. And just having two live cards already puts you at around 25%. So I mean, just looking at it from a pot odds perspective, you have to call with this hand given the price that villain has given you by betting a quarter.
Yeah, I think that's really what it boils down to is the pot odds that you're getting. I mean, I assume that the button in this spot is betting his entire button opening range for this size on this board. So, we can be pretty confident that we have, like you said, two live cards. Quite frequently, and then when you start throwing in other things like our blocker properties, the hands like King Queen and Queen Jack, and then the fact that we have a three straight with King Queen Jack probably adds in a little bit more equity than a normal hand, let's say a hand like 8-9. So yeah, a lot of reasons to call, but really the main thing is that we clearly have more than 15% equity with this hand versus the buttons.
Yeah, this is Black Friday. You got a deal. You can't. You got to capitalize on this is Groupon. This is the Groupon flop c-bet sizing. You need to get in there. All right, so you call. Turn is a queen. So now the board is tripped. Queen, 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 6. You check. and villain bets 2/3. Probably the least surprising thing that I've seen all weekend, that villain continues barreling on this card. Go ahead and tell me, since I'm assuming you don't fold.
I do not fold. This is bluff catching without a pair, so don't fold this pair.
Yeah. Step one, don't fold.
I sort of think this is kind of where like that's the rest of the hand, or like the whole hand, hinges on my decision here. It's tough to imagine calling this like 2/3 or 3/4 ish size turn C bet and then folding to like a normal-ish bet on the river. So
well, the first part of this is like you have king high on the turn, right? So I think like that's the thing that needs to be talked about first.
Okay, so I have king high on the turn. I think that I guess I'll just go into what I think it means to have king high on the turn, and really like what it means is like a function of what I think the button is betting and like what his betting strategy is. I think that the button is very likely just betting 1/3 and then 3/4 on the turn with almost every single hand in their range. Again, like I almost think that this 3/4 turn C bet is almost the exact same thing as the quarter pot on the flop. Strangely,
I think there's one hitch in this that I would disagree with, and I think the one hitch is that I think villain's unlikely to bet ace high on the turn.
Yes.
And I think that's what makes your king high so valuable, is that ace high doesn't need to bet the turn because it's going to be the best hand quite often. So, when you said they're going to bet everything, I think you have to extract, you have to take out like their ace highs and probably their like 6x from that.
Yeah. Everything was definitely that was some poor choice of words. Yeah. They definitely, I would not expect them to bet ace high for the reasons that you said. Also, like betting ace high here generally gets worse hands to fold and doesn't fold out any better hands, especially for this size. Probably doesn't bet 6x, and also probably doesn't bet like hands like deuces through fives on the turn. So yeah, there definitely is like a value checking range. I guess what I meant more by like I think they're just betting their entire range on the turn. I think they're betting their entire kind of air portion of their range on the turn, or just betting this size on the turn with the air just so frequently that king high actually has a ton of value, or maybe more value here than it might seem when you first kind of take a glance at the spot.
Yeah, well, it's easier to make nothing than it is something. And so like if they are betting close to range on the flop and then the queen trips, they just have a lot of hands that they can overdo it with. And I think they have all the incentive in the world to overdo it, which probably means they're going to overdo it. And so like your strategic adjustment is to just call with your king high type hands, imagining that they're most likely going to over bluff here. Right. They especially over bluff when they remove their ace highs, right? Like when they don't see about the turn with ace high and that's removed, just the value of king high just skyrockets, and the value of your ace highs skyrockets. Like,
yeah.
Cool. So they bet 70. You call. River's an ace, which is kind of a great card, honestly.
It's probably, other than hitting a king, or a jack.
It's gin because like we just talked about them not betting ace high on the turn, which means that like their value range is going to be like quads, kings, jacks, 10s, 9s, 8s, 7s, most likely. Something like that.
Oh, I want to stop you there. I think that the ace is good because I think that cuts down their value range even more than that. Like, I'm not sure that once the ace hits the river that they bet 7s and 8s. And I don't know about 9s, but like...
Yeah, that's what I was saying, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was getting to, because like their value range on the turn is like kings, quads, and then jacks through 7s. On the ace, where you can like very conceivably check call with ace high twice, it's unlikely that those hands are now value bets. Like kings probably doesn't value bet now. Kings might. Jacks through 7s, like they might value bet, but they're probably going to pick a smaller size, and they're going to check back at some frequency, which means that when they bet, there is going to be some removal there by the just sheer fact that they are going to check back at least 50% of those hands, maybe even more than that. But when you remove those value hands from their betting range, you just can very quickly and easily see that this card is great for us. Like that they're going to overbluff, right?
Like I think this might be a little bit of a stretch, but maybe not the majority of their betting range on the river, but like a huge portion of their betting range on the river, especially on this card, is going to be quads. And like I don't think I would be surprised if Villain ever picked this size with quads. I think they just get super greedy and like, just overbet a lot and like, just figure like, well, I'm probably only getting called by like ace X or like both, so I might as well just go huge. So like again, I think like the sizing too is another just big reason I want to call, because I don't think most players have the discipline to bet the size with quads. Not that maybe they shouldn't even be betting the size with quads. Maybe the overbet size is good, but yeah, all those things plus this river bet size makes me super happy about calling the river.
Yeah, we don't know that Villain is splitting here on the river, but it seems plausible. Like it seems definitely plausible that they have multiple sizes. So. Yeah, so they bet 70% on the river. Final board, queen, 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 6, ace. John has king, jack. Villain bet quarter on the flop, and then looks like 70% of the pot, 70% of the pot. So 150 to 200 on the river here. John calls with king high, and he wins facing Villain's 10-4 suited. So come on, Villain. That's not even an open on the button.
Yeah. Maybe this guy is not a reg. Although he bet a quarter on the flop, and fish almost never bet a quarter. So
nah, they opened a little bit wider because of the fish in the big blind.
Oh, I see. I thought he just rolled an aggressive number. That was going to
No.
It was the fish in the big blind. Gotcha. Yeah, the fish you can't fold king high for 3 street. It was queen, 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 6.
Calling station. What else you got to say? Calling station. All right, nice hand. After the break, we'll see if we can go a day without incident in John's second attempt at calling down without a pair. Stick around after the break.
Are you a lone wolf searching for the ultimate pack? The CPG Wolf program is a close-knit brotherhood hell-bent on one thing only: chasing poker greatness. Powered by bleeding-edge wolf strats and led by Coach Brad and his lieutenants, CPG Wolves are systematically prepared for almost any spot they'll encounter on the green felt. If you want to plug into an elite team and have a step-by-step game plan to realize your full poker potential, you can apply at cpgwolves.com. Space is limited, and the pack is only as strong as its weakest member. So only the hungriest, grittiest, and most driven will be accepted into the program. Applications are open at cpgwolves.com.
All right, welcome back to today's episode of Tactical Tuesday, where John is bluff catching, perilous bluff catching. Let's just dive right into.
Kind of a lie, because I had trips last time. I had 3 queens in my hand.
Oh yeah, well done. And you had an ace as well. You actually didn't even play both of your cards, just one of them. If we're being technical about the whole.
Didn't even need my good card. I could have won with my bad card.
That's the real question. Do we call down with the bad card? Let's not focus on that for now.
All right.
So you have the ace king of spades, and everybody fold to the small blind. I'm guessing that ace king suited is going to make it into your opening range here, blind versus blind. And they go ahead and 3-bet. So you open to 30, they 3-bet to 100, and you're both playing 1,000 deep. I assume Villain's a reg. You make it 24 bigs, and I'm assuming they call.
Mm-hmm.
The genesis of this hand. 4-bet pot, blind versus blind. Flop is 9-7 deuce rainbow.
Guess what I'm going to do on the flop?
There's 480 in the pot. I'm going to guess that you bet a quarter.
Yep.
That's a good guess. You actually didn't bet a quarter. You bet. Maybe it's a quarter with rake. You bet 110 into 480. Villain calls, which is all super expected. The turn is a 9, so flop is 9-7 deuce. Turn is a 9, board's full rainbow. John's going to check. I haven't seen this hand, but I just know what he's going to do. Villain bets a quarter on the turn. A lot of quarter pots flying around here.
So I think this is like we can stop on the turn and just talk about like I guess calling this bet on the turn, and it's I think on the surface it looks pretty scary because it feels like the big blind is threatening stacks, and could very easily just jam the river with whatever bluffs they have, and presumably they're going to have some 9x as well, which is why I'm checking range on the turn. I think in a 4-bet pot blind versus blind, it's very conceivable that the big blind has hands like 8-9 suited, 10-9 suited, ace-9 suited, maybe even.
And they could be betting some like other hands too on the turn. Like they could be betting 7-8. They could be betting like ace deuce. They could be betting trays through sixes. Like any of those hands that they're going to check back on the river, and also like eke out some thin value versus like ace king, ace queen. I think those hands make sense to bet the turn with as well.
Yep. On the turn though, I wanted to like kind of bring up a I guess I'll call it like a concept that like you've taught me like kind of and brought up over the years is that I thought this was a turn where that once I check call this turn, I'm very unlikely to face a bluff on the river. Like I don't know, because once I check call this turn, I just feel like my range is so condensed to overpairs and like kind of the bottom of my range, maybe being a hand like ace king high, or maybe like ace queen. This maybe would be like the absolute bottom of my range. That
it's not the bottom. Maybe you have like jack 10 as well, something like that.
I don't know if I guess like jack 10 would have to check call facing a quarter too. But anyways, what kind of the point that I was getting was that once I check call this turn, I felt pretty good that the big blind would not try to bluff the river, or would be like too scared of bluffing the river. I don't know if you think this is like.
Depends
I'm sure you
river.
recognize the concept that I'm bringing up. Is this?
Yeah,
like
I do. Like, essentially, the problem is that like you don't have many hands that check fold to the turn quarter,
right?
Given the situation, right? Like you needed once again, if I can go back to the spot, you need 14% equity to call, right? Like most hands in your range are going to have somewhere around 14% equity. It's not a big threshold that you've got to meet there to call the turn. Right. So I'm actually unsure if that, like how applicable that concept is here, considering the size that they chose kind of made it to where you're going to be calling this bet very, 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 very often. And if you're calling this bet very, 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 very often with like your ace highs, some of your like gut shots, then I think it's conceivable that they could pull the trigger on the river. Like, I don't think that like they're just always going to check back. Like, they're 5-6 suited type hands, or queen jack type hands, or king queen, or jack 10. So like, I think that they still have available bluffs on the river if they jam.
Yeah. I thought, okay. So like that was kind of like the big question that I wanted to ask, was that like, is this a spot where like that concept applies? And it sounds like you're saying like, because they bet so small on the turn and like, I'm going to continue so wide, that like, that probably doesn't apply here, because I have to continue with so many hands that they are going to be able to get folds from on the river.
Yeah. Like, and also it's a function of the board too. Like 9-9-7 deuce. I think like if the turn is an ace or a king or something, and they bet, you check, and they bet a quarter and you call, then I don't know if they're going to pull the trigger on the river. Then I think like, okay, at that point, like, you've got a lot of hands that like basically you need to have a lot of available turn folds. And if you don't have any available turn folds, then I think they can still bluff the river. If you have a lot of hands that are going to like check fold the turn, then I think they lose the incentive to jam the river.
Gotcha.
So that's really what it hinges on to me.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because you're going to shed hands on one of two streets, right? You're going to shed hands either on the turn or the river. And in this spot, I think you're going to shed hands on the river, but not the turn.
Right.
So you
Wait,
check call.
okay, yeah. No, I was just question then. If I'm in the big blind shoes, what does this like turn bet really accomplish then?
Well, if you're not shedding hands on the turn, then and they have a pair, then they can get called.
And then just check
by
back the river.
worse.
Sure,
They
sure.
can check back the river. Right. If they have a hand like Jack 10, then you can call in full with like your ace highs, and then they can jam the river and realize fold equity there. Plus, realize
A quarter pot on the turn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
okay. I'm with you.
And I mean, it would make a lot of sense for like their value to bet a quarter too.
Sure.
And I think that's probably like where the strat comes from, is that like their value wants to bet a quarter on the turn, and so like that's probably going to be the size that they're attracted to with most of their range.
Yep.
So anyway, you call a quarter. River's a 10. So
river actually just goes check.
It does go check.
Yeah.
All right. So the river's a 10. You don't face a bet, but this 10 I think is especially scary.
How would you have reacted facing a jam now? Now that I'm like, I was a little bit, I think I was just a little bit too fixated on the idea that like, oh, they're just not going to bluff the river if I call the turn. So I'm just going to call the turn and fold.
I would just fold facing a jam.
Okay.
On the 10.
Yeah.
Like I have enough hands to call with, like
Sure.
calling with like, Jack 10, ace 10. Like I have a bunch of 10x. Probably not folding a 7. I have all the overpairs.
Yep.
I just think that like on the 10 specifically, that like I've got enough hands to call with that I don't need to call with like my ace king highs.
Right.
I can
Yeah. Basically, the 10 upgrades our range enough to the point where we can start folding some unpaired hands.
For sure.
On the river facing jam. Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of different cards that can come on the river. I think that one specifically, just like, we can fold. So goes check, and
I have a question about Villain's hand now that we have finished this discussion.
it's ace
you
queen.
think he has value betting the turn?
I don't know. Probably. I think you have some like other ace high hands that aren't ace king.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that they're probably trying to do two things at the same time. Like they're trying to potentially get some value from worse hands, and they're also trying to make it to showdown.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that like that small turn bet kind of freezes you with your like overpair hands.
Yep.
Like if the turn checks through and you have an overpair, then your size on the river is probably just going to be jam.
Yep.
And that puts ace queen like in a really, really, really bad situation. And it's very likely that, they could make a mistake, an easy mistake one way or the other.
Right.
And so like I think that by betting a quarter, it kind of insulates them from facing that river bet, right?
Sure.
So I think I kind of like the turn bet with ace queen high.
Yeah, after this conversation, I really like the way Villain played his hand.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like it just makes sense from a strategic perspective. Like when the 9 pairs and you check the turn, that's very natural, and they bet a quarter, and that's very natural too. So like everything kind of looks in place based on all of the action.
Right.
Like I think
and then he just like splits on the river, deciding depending on what type of hand he has.
And what the river is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Huh.
So
not
I
the
think both-
conversation I was expecting to have, but
okay. Well, what was the conversation you were expecting to have?
I was like half hoping that, well, like when I first played this hand, I was like, oh wow, like I'm gonna call the turn and he's not gonna bluff the river. And then he checked back with like ace queen. I was like, see.
Didn't bluff the river.
Yeah. And now I'm like, oh wait, he was actually maybe value betting the turn / doing the freezing the action thing that you were just talking about, and he never he wasn't planning on, he didn't think he had to bluff the river with a hand like ace queen, and I just got really excited and thought that I made a cooler play than I actually did.
I think like how they say that genes are a force of nature.
Yeah.
Like, we're compelled to do what our genes want us to do.
Yeah.
I think that in poker, like this that turn card where the 9 pairs, I think the turn card is also like a force of nature. It's like a force of strategy where the 9 pairs and then like the strat just becomes to bet a quarter on the turn facing a check.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do about it. This is just like, this is the genes of this scenario on and this board in this exact situation. And like, it's just a force, and you just do what your genes want to do, what your hand wants to do on this board. And your hand is forced, basically. Like there's nothing you can do about it. The hand basically just played itself.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really good analogy, a good way to put it.
Now it's good. It's a good episode today.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of On the Road Jon.
It's the East Coast, the East
East Coast Jon. We need more East Coast Jon in the Tactical Tuesday straights. So that's gonna do it for today's show. Jon, happy traveling.
I'll be back in Vegas for the next episode, and back at home. Yeah. So hopefully the quality won't deteriorate too much.
And I'll be in Cherokee for the next couple of days. So, all right, man.
See you.
Nice seeing you.
Another final table. See you next week.
Yeah. See you next week. Final table bound. Gotta do better than 7th. The bar has been set pretty high. So let's see if we can keep it up. Peace.
Thanks for listening to Chasing Poker Greatness. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or on your favorite podcast app. Go to chasingpokergreatness.com to get the newsletter. Join the Greatness Village community, book a coaching session, or dive into the latest data-driven poker courses. Follow the show on Twitter at CPG Podcast.